Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today, March 31st of 2022. And I want to talk to you about political dishonesty. This channel, for 15 years in political commentary, we have been addressing political dishonesty from the left, the right, the center, everywhere that it appears, especially in the major news media, especially in politicians that have been elected with their promises to the people that never come true. And today, we're going to be addressing it as well. From New York City to California, we're going to be going across the country a little bit to discuss this and to tell you how this political dishonesty is affecting your life and how elected politicians are actively avoiding you and they're actively manipulating you. And the only reason why they're doing these things is because they want to win an election. They want to remain powerful. They want to remain separated from you. Now, these are big claims that we're making, but we're going to back that up, not only with links to everything we're about to discuss, which you'll see in the description, but also we're going to show it to you on screen. But before we get started, we do want to mention, if this is the first time that you are seeing our channel, we welcome you and we thank you for being part of our audience. We do long-form political commentary, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we reach out to you on all the social media that the internet overlords will allow to be able to hear your voice about the issues that matter, about the things that affect your life across the globe. And we look forward to hearing your tweets, your chats, and your phone calls every Sunday. And we do this because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to free speech, even when the internet overlords disagree, even when your government may disagree. This is a fundamental right of everyone by birth, no matter where you are in the world. So we hope that you will join us this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now on to the issue at hand. Political dishonesty. We see this on a regular basis. It's become so rampant and it has become so ingrained, especially in social media, that most people are desensitized to it. You don't notice it anymore, even as you watch it happen. And many politicians count on the fact that you've become desensitized, that this is normal, that you no longer pay attention to the details so that they can win an election. That's true in 2022. That's true on local, state, and federal levels. We're going to show you exactly what we mean. Let's take one example right off the bat. How about Eric Adams? He is the practical progressive, according to his own words, upon winning the mayor election in New York City. Mayor Eric Adams, on March 27th, came out with this video, which most people probably haven't paid attention to. Most people didn't notice it. We did. Now, what you can see in this video, as Eric Adams mentions, a mother and a baby are held at gunpoint during a recent robbery, and a small group of people in the city are asking why we put an anti-gun unit in place. Now, you see this on the screen yourself. And you see that these men are robbing this woman who has her child with her. Eric Adams is going to tell you this is because of the gun. That's exactly what he said in his tweet. This was because of a gun. And if we had a unit of police in New York City that were there to stop these guys from getting those guns, that the guns are the danger, and if they only didn't have a gun, this wouldn't happen. Now, our response to this very simply was, the problem in this scenario isn't the gun, but the crime of robbery. Are you saying that if the criminal had a knife or a bat, that it would be okay? Then obviously the problem isn't solved by a gun unit, but a crime unit. Pushing a political agenda is why this problem is growing. And we said that on March 28th. And we've mentioned this in social media, but we want to focus on this. Imagine that when these two thugs, these absolute criminals, assaulted this woman and her child, and they pulled out of their bag not a gun, but a knife. Would this have gotten the same attention? If they had pulled out a bat, or if they were barehanded, if they never bothered to bring any weapon, just the two of them assaulting this woman and her child, would you have heard about it? Would anything else have changed? Would she still be robbed? Yes, she would. So why is Mayor Eric Adams talking about a gun unit? Because he's against the Second Amendment, because he's a practical progressive. And part of the practical progressive ideology is that you need to be defenseless. You do not deserve the right to be armed. And you have to rely on government. The government will protect this woman somehow, somewhere. No, the only way I can imagine that they could do that is if they actually had a police officer in the hallway making sure that she would be okay. That's not physically possible. The reality is that the crime is robbery, not owning a gun, not the use of the gun. It's robbery, taking advantage of the defenseless. And maybe it would be different if that woman, that young mother, had a firearm herself to be able to defend herself. Maybe, maybe not. But she'd have another option. Obviously, waiting for the police did not happen. It did not help her. And Eric Adams, for all of his talk of an anti-gun unit, isn't helping. This is his political dishonesty. He's trying to talk about removing the Second Amendment rights of American citizens, like that mother, that he's trying to justify taking away your rights to be able to defend yourself by saying that this is about guns. No, this is about crime, and we cannot hide from that. But that's the political dishonesty of Mayor Eric Adams, the practical progressive. How about this? And let's take a look at this. This is Maxine Waters.
Wilson. Another location where they're taking abs. Is there any more locations than this one?
No, it might have been. There's so many people out here.
1 minute. I want everybody to go home. And I want
we don't got no home. That's why we here. Miss Miss Waters, come on, we gonna go too.
Yeah.
just a moment. Just a moment. Nothing is going to happen here today. Nothing is going to happen anymore today.
What about all these names?
What we're gonna that's what give
Can you leave?
excuse me. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. And so I will be downtown with Lassa. I will get the housing authority. That's why they came out here today. I made them come out here. And I'm gonna go.
And you need to know why they're failing, because Blanca Jimenez repeated, we gave her several meeting requests for you concerning this in Lassa for years.
There's nobody in Washington who works for their people in harder than I do.
I believe you.
I don't want to hear that.
I believe you. So can we finish though? Work with me.
No.
Work with me so we can house people. That's what I'm doing.
I do every day. The money that you got at the store in Washington, D.C. I will continue to work. I will get no more vouchers today.
They would never know vouchers.
You saw that as well as I did. That came from the Los Angeles Times, the LA Times, the left-leaning LA Times. And what did we see? Congresswoman Maxine Waters telling homeless people to go home, telling homeless people that she's working hard on an issue that the workers in her community have been working on for years, that have had zero effect. And Maxine Waters says no one works harder in Washington, D.C. than her to help these people who for years, according to this video, have not been helped, that remain homeless. That she says, I don't want to hear it. Did you listen to that? I don't want to hear it. She doesn't want to hear the voices of the homeless people that she says she was out there to help. She doesn't want to hear her constituents, the people that by oath she is obligated to represent, people that she is obligated to serve. She's telling them, go away. She doesn't want to hear their voices, but she wants them to vote for her. She emphasized that she's working in Washington, D.C., working harder than anyone else. And that's why she needs to be reelected. That's why she needs to be in power, because she is working hard. Hard, and in years, those people have not been helped. For years, those people, by their own words, are homeless. And everything that Maxine Waters is doing isn't helping. You have to remember, she wants to be in power. It's about her power. It's about her being separate. And when people reasserted themselves and said, you aren't doing your job, things aren't improving, because she has no answer to that. She has no answer to the fact that things aren't improving, that she isn't getting the job done, that she is ineffective at her job. She says, I don't want to hear it. And we're done. And we're going home. We're leaving. It's the same thing as what we see with Eric Adams. The problem's the gun. It's that they had a gun, not the robbery. The problem is that crime is rising, not the fact that this unit wants to take away your Second Amendment rights. That's where the focus should be, on the homeless, on people being affected by crime. But instead, we see Eric Adams looking to take away people's rights. We're watching Maxine Waters disregard her constituents. The dishonesty is never ending. And we see this in many places. To go back to New York State, let's take a look. Remember, and I want to make sure you understand this, we were talking about this January 11th of 2022 in our article, New York to Fight Violence with Taxes and Hugs. Why is the crime rising in New York State? Well, in part because appointed Governor Kathy Hochul is bending the knee to progressives like Lieutenant Governor Benjamin, who is an avowed progressive who believes in defunding the police, who is making sure that they can reimagine police, that they can redesign or reallocate. Use whatever progressive term you would like to use. It works out to the same thing. Less police officers will be available, and that means that you will have more scenes like this. They have been working since January. Lieutenant Governor Benjamin, along with appointed Governor Kathy Hochul, have been working to get rid of your ability to have a firearm, your ability to exercise your Second Amendment right, a fundamental right by birth. And they want to take those rights away from you. They want to take away the police from you. They want to leave you defenseless. At the same time, they want to be in power. Appointed Governor Kathy Hochul wants to be reelected. Lieutenant Governor Benjamin wants to be reelected. So they're putting on a very bright face as you are being assaulted with crimes, and they're not paying attention to you. That's just the fact. And that brings me to Congressman Antonio Delgado, because this was very upsetting to me. Representative Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th, the restructured, gerrymandered New York 19th, is now my congressman. And for the last 7 months, actually a little bit longer, we've been trying to reach out to him for various questions, both as a member of the press and also as a constituent. And we've been asking him questions, and he is absolutely ignored and avoided every question we have asked about Afghanistan, about defunding the police, about representation of the people. He won't answer any question. But on March 29th, Congressman Antonio Delgado said, quote, as soon as COVID-19 hit our communities, New York hospitals and healthcare providers stepped up and worked tirelessly to care for people across the state. I'm glad to announce this funding and will keep working to support our frontline workers. Well, that's an interesting statement. It's a very curious statement because it reminded us of something immediately. Our our coverage on September 27th of 2021, when the breaking news was that appointed Governor Kathy Hochul fired 34,000 doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers in New York State. That she removed them even though a year ago they were heroes. Even though for the last decade we have seen that the United States and New York State have not had enough healthcare workers. We don't have enough doctors and nurses and healthcare workers. Not in 2019, definitely not in 2021. And to address this shortfall, this lack of coverage, this necessary coverage of healthcare workers, Kathy Hochul fired 34,000 doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers to support her mandate, a mandate of vaccines. Now, you may think the vaccines are good or bad. That is your choice. That is a medical decision for you to make with your healthcare professional. We're not speaking about that. We're speaking about policy. And appointed Governor Kathy Hochul made the decision that if these very same frontline workers that worked through 2020 and worked into 2021, with all of the knowledge of the issue at hand, the risk that they were taking, that if they did not comply to her will of a government mandate, that they could not work in New York State, thus putting New York State under further pressure to not be able to handle the healthcare needs of every member of New York State. And her answer at the time was, well, we'll get the National Guard to step in. Let's remember, the National Guard are made up of the very same doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers that she wants to tap into. The very same people who she's firing are part of the National Guard. It does not resolve, nor did it fix the problem. And we know that today because we've seen the evidence. We are still short, not just the original shortage of doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers, but the additional pressure of 34,000 that were removed. So we find it interesting that Congressman Antonio Delgado is talking about how he stepped up and that New York State has stepped up to help to be able to serve the people, because it doesn't quite match up with the historical facts as they have been reported. But specifically, Representative Delgado was speaking about an award of $3 million for Broome County Hospital System, the UHS, United Health Services in Broome County. Now, the actual press release from Congressman Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th gerrymandered district is today, U.S. Representative Antonio Delgado announced $3 million in federal funding for United Health Services to reimburse the cost of emergency protective measures undertaken because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The funding was allocated through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, otherwise known as FEMA. This funding will cover the purchase of personal protective equipment, cleaning and disinfecting supplies, construction materials for the conversion of existing patient rooms to COVID-19 ready rooms, and staff contracts to support COVID response units. Why did that strike us as odd? Why did that make us say, well, this is another example of the political dishonesty that we see throughout this nation, similar to what we see with Maxine Waters, similar to what we see with Mayor Eric Adams? You may say, well, how is that the case? Congressman Antonio Delgado only in February became the representative for Broome County. He didn't have the control. He didn't do this. This is the work of another member of Congress, actually Congresswoman Claudia Tenney and her office. That was this funding, this request from FEMA wasn't done by Antonio Delgado. He's taking the credit for it. He's taking the advantage for it because he has an election but that's not his work. And he happens to just be able to take their thunder because New York State gerrymandered the district lines. Now you say, well, Mike, that's a very, very large thing to say. How can you be sure? Well, we weren't sure. That's why we reached out. We went over to Congressman Antonio Delgado's site. We looked at his staff, and we reached out to his legislative director, Robert Daugherty. We called his office in Washington, D.C. to confirm that this was the correct individual who would be able to answer questions about the FEMA funding. And we asked him a very direct question. And this is the email that we sent out. Mr. Daugherty, I am a member of the press reaching out in reference to the announcement March 29th of $3 million in funding from FEMA to United Health Services in Broome County. According to Representative Delgado's press release, this funding was to cover pandemic expenses. As Representative Delgado only received the majority of Broome County in 2022 due to gerrymandered redistricting, can you provide the date that Representative Delgado submitted the request to FEMA for this funding? Was this request made specifically for United Health Services? Was this request made solely by Representative Delgado or in tandem with other representatives? In addition, per the press release, quote, this funding will cover, and it goes on to say, and staff contracts to support COVID response units, end quote. Does this mean that funding will cover the rehire of some of the 34,000 healthcare workers denied the ability to work in New York State by appointed Governor Kathy Hochul in September of 2021? Does the FEMA funding for staff require vaccinations? These are important questions for the constituents of Representative Antonio Delgado. These are serious questions that are not answered in the press release. And so we reached out to his legislative director. That was on March 28th. We notified them that we were going to be publishing this article for you, the public, to know and to get the exact answer from them. In fact, we state that we will republish and we will provide to the public verbatim and in context any response that we received from Congressman Antonio Delgado and or his office to make sure that the public was properly informed. Now you may say, well, Mike, that's not really enough. How can you expect them to have a response in 24 hours? This was something that the legislative director just answered. They have that file right in front of them. 48 hours, 24 hours from our request. This would be something that is present in their mind. This isn't some buried, hidden gotcha. This is something they were just working on, something they just put a press release out on, something that they were present and aware of. And by the way, when we say that they were present and aware of this, we want to make sure that you understand it wasn't just that he put out a press release. It wasn't just that he put out a tweet. We also see that Representative Delgado put this out on Facebook. He was running around all the social media to take as much credit as he possibly could. He even reached out to the news media. And we see that this is from WNBF, News Radio. And they promoted this inaccurate information that Representative Delgado worked on this by himself and that he was the one who provided this to us. But that's not real. I know the news media, the major news media, both locally and nationally, want to cover for many Democrats. The LA Times is covering for Maxine Waters. In New York City, we have the New York Times and CNN and MSNBC and NBC trying to cover for Mayor Eric Adams. And here we can see WNBF covering for Congressman Antonio Delgado. Not once did they take their job seriously and ask the hard questions. This wasn't new. The FEMA funding didn't happen in January or even in February when Representative Antonio Delgado took over the New York 22nd District due to the gerrymandering of the New York State political system. No, this was done many months ago by the Tenney office, and Congressman Delgado is claiming victory and success so that you will vote for him, because you will think that he is actually trying to help you, that you will believe, you will be manipulated into believing that he had the foresight to do this. But his staff will not comment on this. His staff will not reply. Representative Antonio Delgado will not answer questions from the media or constituents, because this isn't about you. This is about him maintaining his power. It's about him getting reelected. And we are still happy to correct this record if we are wrong when we hear from either Representative Delgado or his staff to give us the answers we have requested. What was the date that he submitted the FEMA request for? He won't answer that question. We have only one conclusion: because he didn't submit it. The Tenney administration did. That he is stealing the thunder on work of others to mislead the public. That is the conclusion that we come to based on the evidence that we have before us, because they don't want to address this. They don't want you to think about this. They want you to forget, to move on, to just vote blindly and accept this. That is what we are getting from individuals like Congressman Antonio Delgado. That's what we're getting from individuals like Maxine Waters. That's what we're getting from Eric Adams. They aren't here to do the best for you. They're not here to be efficient for you, to be effective for you. They are here to lord over you. They are the neo-nobles and you are a serf. You are here to abide by their directives, so that when they take away your Second Amendment right, when they take away your doctors and healthcare workers, when they take away and leave you homeless, and when they decide to steal someone else's work and effort for their own benefit, well, it's okay. Because the news media won't call them out. The major news media won't ask these questions. The major news media won't stand for you, the individual American citizen, and say, this is ineffective, this is inefficient, this is counterproductive, that you are not answering the core problems of crime, of homelessness, of health care, and, of course, of due diligence and work. We remain open to allow, as we have said in our letter to the office of Congressman Antonio Delgado, as we have said in many letters to Congressman Antonio Delgado since September of 2021, we are happy to have him on this program, as we have had many elected Democratic officials and many Democratic candidates. And we will treat him with all due respect to ask him the questions and hear whatever answer he has, and we will give him as much time as he needs to answer our questions and to be able to address these inefficiencies and these overreaches of power. And we will provide it to the public, unedited, verbatim, in full context, so that you, the American citizen, the constituent of Antonio Delgado, or Maxine Waters, or Mayor Eric Adams, or appointed Governor Kathy Hochul, we will give them as much time as needed so that you, the American citizen, their constituents, will be able to evaluate their answers and vote appropriately, however you see fit. But they don't want to answer the hard questions. They don't want to answer the honest questions. They rather would manipulate you, to distract you, to tell you that it's about guns when it's about crime. That they want to tell you it's about their help when you're homeless and you remain homeless for years. That it's about someone else's work that they will steal, that they will plagiarize and take as their own because it advances their goal. That they will leave you without doctors and nurses and healthcare workers because someone dared to say they don't agree. That they don't believe the government has the power to mandate anything in an individual's life, not in the United States. These are examples from across the country of political dishonesty, of politicians who are twisting the facts that exist in front of us, knowing full well that the major mainstream media will never call them out for these issues, that they know full well that they can stand up and say dishonest, ineffective, inaccurate statements, and that they will be protected on high, and that they will be able to maintain their power because it serves the major mainstream media and the progressive ideology. And we will tell you that we believe that's destroying America. Now you can say, well, Mike, I think you might be wrong. Perhaps you're misunderstanding. Okay, then answer us. Then we ask, why won't Representative Antonio Delgado answer us? They knew we were making this video. They knew the questions we had asked and wanted answers for. They knew that we would give them every opportunity to provide us an answer so that we could provide it to you verbatim. They don't care. They think they are above the media. They think they are above, more importantly, you, the constituent. That they don't need to answer to you, that you must answer to them. In 15 years of doing political commentary, I have learned one thing about politicians. They are absolutely no different than you and I. They are not smarter. They are not better. They're not more effective. They are exactly the same as you and I. And that means they need to be held to the same standards as you and I. And when they are being asked, because of their responsibility, because of their obligation to ask critical questions and ask for an answer to those critical questions that have consequences that affect 20 million people in New York State, that affect 350 million people in the United States, that affect the world, they have to answer. Perhaps you think we have been unfair. Fair enough. Perhaps you think that this is biased because we're Republicans. I would tell you that's not. Especially since we have given and we are giving each of these individuals as much time as they need to come on here onto this program to answer our questions and to provide it verbatim in context for you. They may not want to answer the question because they know the answer already. They already know that we are correct in our conclusions. But we look forward to hearing what you have to say. We look forward to seeing you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to join us in our live stream as we reach out across the world to talk about issues like this, like political dishonesty and its consequences to all of our lives. We hope to see you this Sunday at 2:30 p.m.